Hello guys, and welcome to my cooking guide for Caves of Qud. My name is Roguelike, and this guide is intended for both beginners and players who just want a quick refresh on how cooking works here in Qud. As usual, I'm going to try and keep this video as short as possible so we can get right to the meat of the matter, no pun intended by the way, and then just get back to playing the game. So, let's jump in here. I have made a character here. Now, what is cooking? Cooking is actually really interesting in Qud, especially in that you can actually play the whole game without really delving into it at all. It's not an essential skill. However, by not using cooking, you're actually missing out on a huge chunk of the game, both mechanically speaking and in terms of how much more powerful your character can become. So cooking can actually give you huge bonuses and can give you anything really from extra HP and armor and quickness all the way to giving you access to mutations that your character doesn't usually know. And in some rare instances, you can even get permanent buffs, like +1 to all of your attributes, +1 to your armor value, skill points, and brand new mutations altogether, even playing as a Truekin. So, let's start by taking a look at the cooking skill tree here. So, obviously you're going to want to buy into this tree. The prerequisites for cooking are very low. It's just intelligence, and it's actually a pretty cheap skill. So I would recommend speccing into cooking whenever you've got some free skill points kicking around. So when you buy cooking, you get meal prep. This allows you to cook from up to 2 ingredients at a campfire, as well as preserve your food. This is the most basic skill, but even having this opens up such a huge swathe of recipes that you can learn. This is really the main aspect of cooking right here, is just meal prep. After that we have harvestry and butchery. Harvestry allows you to essentially gather items from plants, like this water vine here. You see that? We just harvested a vine wafer. And butchery allows you to do the same, but with animal parts, so meat, essentially. After that, we have spicer. This allows you to cook with 3 ingredients total, rather than just 2. And as it says here, meals cooked with 3 ingredients bestow more powerful status effects. That's definitely true. It's a fun skill to look into. I actually typically get spicer last in the tree, and I normally pick up carbide chef before I get spicer. Carbide chef's kind of cool in that whenever you level up or explore a new part of the map, there's a 5% chance you become inspired. While inspired, the next time you cook a meal, by choosing ingredients, you get a choice of 3 dynamically generated effects to apply. So kind of like when you buy a mutation with mutation points, a brand new mutation, this gives you a list of 3 possible recipes that you want, you select it, and you obviously pick the one that's more suitable for your character. And I will show you that in a moment. Okay, so let's take a look at the ingredients. Now that we've finished looking at the skills, let's take a look at what we actually need to cook. So if you go into your inventory and you take a look at your food, you can see here these are all ingredients, and it tells you how many servings you have. These all do different things, generally speaking. And if you look at an ingredient here, you can actually see what it does. this will add HP based effects to our meals. Whereas say the rubber gum will add rubber based effects to our meals. Now this is intentionally vague here. There's a whole plethora of different things that each of these ingredients can do. But this gives you a general kind of gist as to what they might bestow to your character. Now, to get servings of ingredients, you need to preserve them first. So we're at a campfire here. Every character knows how to make a campfire. It will be on your ability bar. You can see it's right here. We're going to interact with that, and we're going to go to preserve your fresh foods. This is going to take any meat or any vegetables that you've picked and turn them into usable ingredients for cooking. There you go. You can see we turned that vine wafer sheaf, into vine wafer sheaf. We turned some meat into jerky and spine fruit into spine fruit jam. You can also do the same with exotic foods. Now, exotic foods are the more rare ingredients. This again includes both plants and animal parts, but it also includes things like injectors. So if we want, we can preserve our salve injector. And it'll ask you how many you want to preserve, and you get 5 servings from that. So that's kind of how ingredients and preserving, you need to preserve stuff in order to be able to cook with it. Now with that said, what about recipes? So, I already know some recipes on this character, and you can view your recipes either by going into your journal here and going to the end to take a look at your recipes, or you can interact with the campfire and going to cook from a recipe. You can see there's one recipe that we have the ingredients for right here. We can also show the other recipes that we're missing ingredients for. There's also recipe books in the game. So, plenty of books in Qud. However, if you pick up a book that has green text like this, that means it's a recipe book. Now you can interact with this by pressing R to read it, and it will show you normally between 1 and 3, let's say, recipes. Sometimes less. Then after you exit, those recipes will be added to your character. So you can now cook those at the campfire. Okay, so before we actually do some cooking here, and we will be cooking very shortly, I just want to explain exactly how cooking works. And this is the real important part of this video. So when you cook, there are 2 effects that can trigger. The first is a basic effect, which is kind of like a static bonus. Something like +10 cold resist or the ability to use fire breath. And this will always proc if you're cooking with just a single ingredient. So if you just want a guaranteed effect like that, you can just cook with a single ingredient. The second kind of effect is called a trigger effect. And these will set a condition for an effect to actually proc. So for example, whenever you drop below 20% HP, do X. And X could be something like phase out for 10 rounds or teleport to a random location. And trigger effects are added by cooking with 2 or more ingredients. Also, whenever you cook, there is a 10% chance you get a tasty bonus, which adds even more power to your recipe, and you can guarantee a tasty bonus by cooking with salt. So let's actually do some cooking. Now you'll notice here we are inspired. Which is, we will be able to cook and get 3 randomly generated effects and pick the best one to us. So let's try that. And of course, that inspired comes from Carbide Chef here. So let's choose ingredients to cook with. And this is our list. This is everything we have right now. Now why don't we get fancy with it? We can go for congealed skulk. Let's go soul curd. We do have cloning draft, but why not use it? Here we go. We're going to cook with 3 ingredients. Okay. Now, we only got 1 on our list that time because we used the cloning draft, which basically gives you the a guaranteed effect of cloning yourself. But normally there would be 3 here if you're inspired. I just really wanted to use the cloning draft. I can't help myself. And also, I want you to see how cool it is to cook with it. On top of that, we get +4 dodge value. And we'll get 100% to natural healing rate, meaning that we will heal up twice as quick as usual. So now we see how many times we clone. And that is now added as a recipe. And if I skip a few turns here, you'll see that we will start to clone between 1 and 3 times. There's 1. Any more? 2. Can we get the high roll of 3? No, we got 2, but 2 clones not bad. So that's a very, very brief example of how some recipes work. This was actually a pretty powerful recipe that we just cooked up there. I can also give you another example here. If I cook with just a single ingredient, you'll see that we just get the basic effect rather than a trigger. So if I cook with the congealed salve here, you can see we get 12% to our natural healing rate. That's just a fixed effect. It's also worth pointing out that each ingredient has different effects associated with it, both basic and trigger effects. This means there's actually an insane amount of variety with cooking. And unless you fish for a very particular recipe, you're actually unlikely to see the same recipe occurring over multiple games. And that pretty much is everything. That's cooking. I encourage you to experiment with this really cool skill and see what you can come up with. I'll also link the cooking effects page on the wiki down below if you want to try for a specific recipe. Before we go as well, I would just like to give you a little tip as well. If we go down to, let me see if I can get this right. I always, self-discipline. There is a skill here called Fasting Way. This is very cheap. I mean, after you spend the 150, but Meditate is also great. But Fasting Way here says you hunger and thirst at 1/2 the normal rate, and the metabolic effects from meals last twice as long. I really recommend getting this if you have some powerful recipes that you want to keep for longer. Similarly, Mind over Body is also really good. It's quite expensive to get to this point because it needs 29 willpower. But you can see you hunger and thirst at 1/6 the rate. And they last 6 times as long. So pretty crazy actually. If you can get that, go for it. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and leaving a comment below. I also regularly stream Caves of Qud over on Twitch, weekdays from 6 PM GMT. So come say hi. And until next time, live and drink, and also cook.